All right. Well, thank you both for joining us today from your respective remote locations. We're looking forward to having Ranky Tanky here at the Acadiana Center for the Arts next week. My name is Samuel Oliver. I'm the executive director of the Acadiana Center for the Arts here in Lafayette, Louisiana. And I wanted to introduce a special host of ours today, Mark DeWitt. Dr. Mark DeWitt's an ethnomusicologist here at the University of Louisiana, Lafayette. He's studied Cajun and Creole music. He studied world music and many other indigenous forms of North American music. And so it's just a pleasure to have him here today to engage y'all in a conversation about Ranky Tanky, its music, its history, and everything that people can expect when they're here at the ACA. And since we're bringing some of this work into the schools while we're here, to give them a little extra something as context for those discussions as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Mark DeWitt, and everyone enjoy. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you,
And
Sam.
it's before we get any farther, I'd like to give our musicians a chance to introduce themselves. Thank you guys for coming. Charlton Singleton is their trumpet player, and maybe you do some other things too. I know you sing too.
A little bit. When I stand next to Kiana, I'm the trumpet player.
Yeah.
She's got the singing down, yeah, right.
She's definitely the singer, but I do lead a couple of songs and I sing background, but mainly trumpeting and background singing in the band. Yes.
Right. And where are you from exactly?
I am from Allendale, South Carolina, which is about 14 or 15 miles going north along the coast of South Carolina from Charleston.
Okay,
but definitely on the coast.
On the coast, but on the mainland, not on an island.
Definitely on the mainland. Yes.
Yeah. And then we have Clay Ross, guitarist in the band. Where are you from, Clay?
Yes. I'm originally from Anderson, South Carolina, which is in the northwestern tip of the triangle that is South Carolina. It's about 2 hours from Atlanta, Georgia, about 2 hours from Asheville, North Carolina, and about 2 hours from our capital in Columbia, South Carolina. And I am currently in Brooklyn, New York, where I've lived for almost 20 years now.
Okay, right. So before we go any further, I'd like to play these introductory videos that your manager shared with me. And just so the folks out there who haven't heard you guys before get a little sense of the band, what you're all about, and just your sound too, you know. So we got a little, two little short videos. One is more educational. The other one's kind of a musical collage. I forgot to, did I forget to share the sound?
Yeah, I guess you have to share audio, right?
It's just an easy thing to forget because you have to remember to hit the checkbox.
It is, yeah. It really
and if you don't remember, then you got to do it again. Here we go.
Hey, another year of this and we'll have it all mastered, right?
Oh,
right.
man.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let's hope not.
Ranky Tanky, we are a quintet from Charleston, South Carolina. We represent musically the Gullah community. Gullah is basically this community of islands just off of the mainland of the United States. You have all of these tiny little islands just off of the coast. And these islands were home to descendants of former Western African slaves. The Gullah community is still very much present in the Low Country where we're from. And education is very important to us. Spreading the knowledge of the Gullah community to folks that may not have heard about it.
We go from a single clap, and then you have one of the leaders or elders of the church, they'll go, and everybody will go there, you know. Okay, now stay there, stay right there. Now we have this thing called the
The Gullah Geechee people have had such a profound impact on American history, and their narrative isn't really told. So it's just amazing to be able to see and learn more about that.
We interpret songs, kids' games, poems, and sort of give them more of a contemporary style.
Their work right now is #1 on the jazz charts. I mean, it's just an amazing experience to have them here. Once you know what a Gullah rhythm is, and you're like, oh, okay, I can hear it in my jazz, I can hear it in my rock. And now to be able to include Ranky Tanky's performance here on campus into the curriculum for next semester will just add another layer to our understanding of Gullah culture.
That's all right.
All of that, all of that.
And now we get a little audio collage that gives you a sense of what the band sounds like on stage or in their recordings.
Old lady come from Booster, had 2 hens and a rooster. Rooster died, old lady cried, now she don't need eggs like she used to. No, death, won't you spare me over till another year? She said, come back home, boy. Come back home.
Who is the greatest?
We are the greatest.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Positive, definitive. All right, all right.
So there we have that. So that's something for the folks at home to give you a little introduction to y'all. And in those videos, we saw your lead vocalist, Kiana Parler. And where's she from?
Kiana is from Harleyville, South Carolina, which is, I'd say it's maybe about 20 miles or so, 25 miles or so from Charleston, from downtown. It's just far enough out to, have a lot of privacy, but it's close enough to, if you zip in, like for example, when Kiana was a teenager still, she was singing professionally already and doing a big performance in Charleston. So it was, nothing for them to go there all the time. But yeah, Harleyville, nice little small out in the country town. Yeah.
How did y'all meet her?
Oh gosh. I think Quentin met Kiana first, and she was maybe, I don't know, 13 or 12 or something like that.
13, yeah.
Yeah. And
Quentin, your drummer.
yes, Quentin is our drummer. And she, I think, sang in a festival where Quentin was a part of the ensemble. I think it was Piccolo Spoleto here in Charleston. And that I think was probably the first relationship, the first friendship, I should say, that came about. But the 5 of us have known each other, I think probably it's well over 20 years. But we just really put it together as Ranky Tanky about 4.5 or 5 years ago. Now, before all of Ranky Tanky, or before the group, we played together in different configurations and different genres and styles of music. And Clay and myself and Kevin and Quentin had a band together, a little quartet that we called the Gradual Lean, and we would play jazz originals and standards and rework them and everything. And we had a nightly thing going on. But then was that about 2000 or so, where 2001, where I think you moved, Clay moved, and everybody was just sort of doing their own thing, finding their own voice, you know, in the world of being a performer. Clay could tell you about all of his adventures. He's got a whole backload of adventures, great musical experiences. You know?
Yeah, we all were kind of had been playing together a lot, and it just kind of came time to, you know, just explore the things. And it was never, you know, we never said, oh, we're going to disband the group or anything like that. It wasn't such a big deal. It was just everybody was kind of focused on other things. And meanwhile, you know, kind of 20 years passes, and I had moved to New York, and Charlton had, you know, started really focusing on his own work and conducting, being the leader of the Charleston Jazz Orchestra, and that was keeping him really busy. And Quentin was touring with other artists, likewise Kevin, and Kiana had this whole career, you know, with Clay Aiken and Kelly Clarkson and all this American Idol blowback, where she was kind of involved in that whole world as a contestant first, and then later as like a touring artist with some of these, you know, as a side person essentially, with some of these other award winners and artists, and had an amazing career and opportunities doing that. And you know, I was the one that kind of came to the group with the idea to create Ranky Tanky, because my experiences had really evolved to be focused more in the world music and folk music worlds and communities. I'd come to New York City initially to pursue a career in jazz. The first break that I got as a quote unquote jazz musician was with a Brazilian percussionist named Ciro Baptista. And Ciro was well known for playing with Herbie Hancock, and that's how I even knew who he was. And so to me, it was like, oh, I was going to get this opportunity to play with a jazz hero. But really what happened is I went to school on a whole other world of music, and kind of got turned on to all this Northeastern Brazilian stuff, forró music and maracatu and frevo and all these different styles from Pernambuco. And what I really found in that experience was that it mirrored a lot of the folk music from my home state of South Carolina, and very specifically the Gullah music that was, you know, native to Charlton and Quentin, when they would play duets in the local cafe in Charleston, South Carolina. And they'd be playing Autumn Leaves 1 minute, and then just as a duet, they'd play Wade in the Water and Take You to Church. And so I was really used to that. And I knew that. I didn't really know what it was, or really have a frame of reference for it. It was something that I knew when I was younger through them. And then having these experiences in Brazil and otherwise, it really made me want to, a couple of things happened at the same time. It was like, I noticed that I was having all these, on all these big stages around the world, watching other artists present a contemporary expression of their culture, right? The artists from Brazil, the artists from Puerto Rico, the artists from China, you know, all, and they were kind of representing their very specific, you know, region of the world, and that music in a very authentic way, and but in a very contemporary way. And I noticed that there was a total lack of, you know, Gullah representation on the contemporary stages of global music, world music, and folk music. What you would see when you did see Gullah was a lot of sort of reenactments, I would call them. And I'm not in any way downplaying those. They're amazing, and some of them are absolutely stunning. But it kind of takes you back to that time. It's not as contemporary, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I
So
guess-
what we've done, like add instruments and Charlton can extrapolate a little bit more on that, but we've put our stamp on this idea, and it turned out to be a good idea. It worked out. Yeah.
I should say so. And I also want to say that some of those reenactment type of performances are on YouTube, and I've used them to show my students what a shout is.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Because
and a lot
who
of
else
them were
does that
references.
anymore?
Exactly. No, almost nobody does it. And a lot of those groups were really important in informing my early research when I first presented the idea to the band. I didn't want to come to the band with just this, completely nascent idea. When I came to the band, I had a very fleshed out vision for where I wanted to take it. It has far exceeded that at this stage, but at least I knew to get the ball rolling, because these guys are very serious. They don't play games.
Yeah.
No,
So-
people were busy. They wanted to know that we were going to do something with integrity and do something that was going to be serious.
Right. I
And
should
take
also
music.
mention that the Lafayette audience is pretty accustomed to that type of presentation of an updated tradition
Absolutely right.
through
Red Stick
Festival
Ramblers.
International. Festival
Yeah.
International has been going on here since the 80s.
Well,
as
that's
well
one
as
of the.
yeah.
That was one of the places I played that was kind of turning me on, to this potential, right? I played that festival 3 times. I absolutely love it. It's
Very
like
nice.
dancing at the Blue Moon. It's just the greatest.
So Sam can say welcome back when he sees you next week.
I would love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I just hate I'm not going to get to dance Zydeco with this pandemic.
Not too many of those going on.
I know.
A few people are still trying to carry on, but it's a little rough.
I know.
So what does the group name mean? What does Ranky Tanky mean?
Oh, Ranky Tanky loosely translates to mean work it or get funky with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a kid's game. I'm sure that our viewers have, seen kids playing patty cake or something like of that sort, some sort of kids game like that. Ranky Tanky actually is one of those kids games, and we thought it was cool, it was fun, it was catchy, and would epitomize the energy of all 5 of us. And so we decided to use that as a name, and it's worked very well. Good, not only the joy from the song or from the actual, game, but it rolls off the tongue quite well.
Yeah.
Although one of the first trips we went on, somebody said, rickety tickety, is that what you call
Yeah.
yourselves?
But just to highlight how cruel the music business can be at times, I definitely remember an early booking agent when I was first trying to get attention for the band, and I was trying to get us a booking agent, a early booking agent I solicited. He said, Ranky Tanky, terrible band name.
Send him a picture of the Grammy.
I know. I send the Grammy to everyone now.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
And we've mentioned Gullah already. So, and I think I guess the video kind of introduced who the Gullah people were, but that's another thing I think folks around here can relate to in terms of a Black community within the United States that still has its own identity. Because we have that here too, with their Creoles, down here, Creoles of color, Black Creoles, who invented Zydeco, for example. And they have trail rides, and they're cowboys, and they have their own culture. And so I wonder if you could tell us a little more about Gullah culture. Like Ranky Tanky said, translates. Does that mean there's a Gullah language?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, first of all, there's the Gullah Geechee corridor, which starts at the southern part of North Carolina and goes down the coast of South Carolina and Georgia into the top of Florida, just like we saw in the video, you know. And on those islands, which for many years were only reachable by boat, you had former West African slaves. And this really goes back to, you know, the mid 18th century or slightly before that. It really goes, you know, kind of far back. The way that they worshiped together, the way that they entertained each other, the way that they prepared food, arts and crafts, if you will, all of those things were, you know, eventually passed on. When we're out on the road and we talk to kids and do outreach, we always liken it to sort of the telephone game. You know, that game where you tell the person next to you something, and then they tell the next person, or you whisper it to the next person, and by the time it gets all the way around, it's different in some way. And so a lot of those traditions and whatnot have been passed on. The way that we sing a song in my neighborhood, the same song could be just a tad bit different in the neighborhood that's 2 miles away, which is different from the neighborhood a couple of miles away. Just slight little differences. But one of the things about Gullah is it being such an informant. And Clay could tell you about this. Like, I remember Clay was saying about how he'd be in a different country and he heard some things and said, oh, that sounds close to what, you know, Quentin does at church, you know, on Sunday mornings or whatever have you. And a lot of times when we are out on the road, we speak to our audience and we talk about a lot of these things that they probably have heard or seen before, but probably just didn't know that the Gullah community was actually the root or one of the main, you know, roots of what it is. You know, everything from sweetgrass baskets to kumbaya, you know, those are all, you know, uniquely Gullah. Yeah, it's been around for a long time, and it's still here. There's still a lot of amazing people and amazing things that happen in the Gullah community. There's still those islands. Some of them are still reachable only by boat. Some of them are not the same. Like, for example, places like, you know, the very famous Hilton Head Island, that was one of them, you know, or
that's been developed into something else now.
Very, very. But then on the flip side, like there's another island just near Hilton Head called Defusky Island. And half of Defusky Island is developed and half of Defusky Island is not developed. It's still in its natural state, still with roads and still there are houses that people have lived on for generations and generations. And there's still some families that are over there. Yeah, the corridor is still there and the culture is still there for sure.
Do people still speak the language?
Definitely. Boy, yeah, them boys speak up that language.
Okay, give us a little flavor, yeah?
But it is, I don't know if you it could speak on this, Charlton, even more, like to highlight that more, but like there's, for example, you know, there's a whole generation of younger people that are sort of really embracing, that I see as an outsider. You know, I always make sure to acknowledge that I'm a disciple of the music and not a descendant of the culture. And but I have noticed, you know, like the Geechee experience as an example, you know them, Charlton?
Yeah.
Like, you know, younger, like people younger than us, millennials that are, you know, really championing the language and the culture and making social media videos kind of showcasing
I would say
it,
more
right?
so that it's because of how we have social media nowadays that that it's just being seen more, and that those younger folks are not afraid to express themselves and speak and act the way that they normally do. For example, and Quentin talks about this a lot. When we were growing up, and we would have someone that was a teacher that didn't necessarily live here, but came and was teaching in our particular schools, they might look at us or listen to us and say that we talk funny. No, I don't talk funny.
You talk funny.
You talk funny. That's just how I was raised. That's the way it is. I imagine people, in the quote unquote Cajun world get the same thing. There's a certain accent, there's a certain way that that syllables are used. There's a certain vernacular. The words come off, differently. The phrases are different.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes even the cadence of a phrase can mean something. Just like anywhere else in the world where if you were to go to, and someone was speaking and you thought it sounded different, that's just the way it is. There's a different sound to the way someone speaks if they live in Boston versus if they live in Chicago. And so I think with the Gullah community and the times that we live in now, everyone is just, embracing, of course, who they are. This is who I am. This who I is. I could talk like I talk.
And one more word, sangaree. You have a translation for that?
Not in particular.
Based on what I read about it, it's sangria. It's like a wine.
Yeah.
Sangria.
Yeah, I tried looking it up too, and I got that version definition, and then some other versions too. And
yeah, no, that one was like a lot of the process of the Ranky Tanky music, especially in the early, in the early music was when we were first trying to get the project off the ground. I was bringing a lot of what I was doing research, much like probably you do all the time, Doctor, the kind of ethnomusicological in my own way, my own,
sure,
doing research about the culture and and reading all the literature that I could find and researching all the Alan Lomax archives and really trying to find songs that I thought would fit our personalities, but that also, that would kind of work in this kind of contemporary framework, and I'd bring things to the band and they'd say, oh yeah, like that. Sometimes they'd be like, I've heard that before, but we don't play it that way. We do it like this. Or it would be, I've never heard that before, and I need to make sure somebody didn't just make that up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Don't trust the transcriber.
Yeah, pretty much. Or don't trust that, like when that person was being interviewed by whomever,
Mm-hmm.
From out of towner came in, they weren't just blowing smoke,
Mm-hmm.
Sure. All right. What about food? Y'all got any special recipes down there?
Well, I mean, there are similarities. Like, for example, I imagine where you all are, is there a lot of red beans and rice?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the counter to that is black-eyed peas and rice. There's a lot of crawfish.
Oh, nice.
For you all.
Oh, for us. I thought you could say you have those too.
Shrimp.
Shrimp.
Shrimp and grits.
Shrimp.
Yeah, shrimp and grits.
Mm-hmm.
So those are probably, especially shrimp and grits. That's one of the main things. And then just being where we are, it's really all about rice because of the that's definitely the West African influence. The West African slaves that were brought here were very, very skilled with rice. And so rice is definitely king in this area.
Nice. So yeah, because it's the things that kind of the three things that this area is known most for are language, food, and music.
Well,
So,
see, then that goes to the whole thing that you know, just with the similarities between Charleston and New Orleans and Savannah, you know, they're all, you know, kind of sister cities. They all have those three things in common. It's all about the music. It's about the cuisine. It's about tourism. They're all port cities. I challenge anybody to nowadays. I challenge you to Google French Quarter New Orleans and look at the photos, and then Google French Quarter Savannah and look at the photos, and then Google French Quarter Charleston and look at the photos. Tell me if you don't see literally the same buildings.
right.
I mean, it's
Cool.
that's just the truth.
Yeah.
That's
Colonialism. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And
I wanted to
as
ask
for-
you.
you
No,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I wanted to ask you, Mark, and I was curious, and Samuel, when we were talking about language, is the Creole dialect, or is it considered a patois, or is it considered an actual language?
That depends who you talk to.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people who speak Creole consider it its own language.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the other thing to keep in mind, it's still, as opposed to the Gullah, where it's a kind of a creolized combination of English and West African languages.
Yeah.
Here it's French is
Yeah.
the thing that gets mixed in.
Right.
Right. There's a lot of French in it, and although when it's written down, it's usually spelled completely differently. So you have to like to read it out loud, and if you know French, it's like, oh, that's what they're trying to say.
Right.
And then it has some different words thrown in there.
Huh.
But I just one little anecdote. I had a teacher once. She was French Canadian, and in graduate school, she decided that she wanted to do her fieldwork in Martinique and Guadeloupe, in the Antilles, French Antilles, and she had to learn Creole, the kind of Creole they speak down there, which is not the same as they speak here. Nonetheless, she had to learn Creole in order to do her field work down there. And she had a really hard time convincing the university there in Michigan that was a different language. And that would count, because as a graduate student, you had to learn 2 foreign languages, right? You had to get tested that you knew them well enough, some kind of proficiency. So she was trying to convince them that Creole was its own language, and she got a lot of pushback for that. That's why I say it depends on who you ask.
Yeah, right. And are you familiar with Dr. Lorenzo Turner, for example?
No.
Yeah.
So he was a linguist who studied the Gullah language, and they essentially have named it as, I don't know who authorizes these things, but it is considered a language. There's a Bible published in Gullah that you can get online, and
I have one. Of course.
yeah, I got one too. But it's considered. I just think that's interesting, and that's not our area of expertise, and that's why I'm asking you. I'm actually it's interesting to me to learn. You know,
I'll say similarly, you can get the dictionary of Louisiana French.
Oh, that's cool.
Which
That's
is
interesting.
inclusive of Creole, but also includes many other kind of traditions of French that have come here through different waves of migration. Some direct from France, and many of them through other colonies, through the Acadian exile, you name it. But the Dictionary of Louisiana French does kind of trace individual, derivations.
Yeah, that's interesting. But they don't necessarily go as far as to like recognize it as its own language. Like Mark's friend has a hard time convincing academics that it's a language.
I mean, it's definitely a real language. I think we might get into some significant semantics about what.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, and who decides, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's
So I
to
thought,
say?
I wondered if we could get in a little bit into y'all, the actual music that you do, the Ranky Tanky music, and how Vanessa was kind enough to send me your liner notes to your Good Time album. So I got the sense that there are like 5 originals on there and 7 traditional songs. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe you could walk us through just a little bit, like when you have a traditional song, how do you choose it? Where do you get it from? And also, what do you do? How do you decide to arrange it?
Well, in the beginning, like Clay said, Clay kind of just found some tunes that he thought would fit our personality and played it for us. And a lot of times what we would do or with songs that are already established in the Gullah community or that we've gotten from the Gullah community is basically use our individual music artistry in order to frame it so that it fits the band. For example, with the song Ranky Tanky, that's a kid's game. So you just think of, old lady come from Booster, had 2 hands and a rooster. The rooster died, the old lady cried. Now she don't eat eggs like she used to. Pain in my head, Ranky Tanky. Pain in my hands, Ranky Tanky. So that's the game. So then you apply the Gullah beat. There's a specific rhythm. Just like in New Orleans, you have the big 4. In Gullah, we have the Gullah rhythm. Excuse me. And so you have Quentin that establishes that rhythm, being the master percussionist that he is.
Mm-hmm.
We in this particular song, Clay is leading. So Clay found a good key, that fits, good for his voice. We've got that rhythm from the drums. We've got Clay now just singing that song in a particular key or that game in a particular key. We now get Kevin to put his artistry of creating a bass line that's going to link up with the rhythm and also be kind to the actual key. We get Clay's artistry as a guitarist in order to play a specific rhythm that's going to accompany the drums. It really all starts with that drum rhythm. So we've built it up that way and put our own individualism in it, and then we create other parts for solo opportunities, for me to play it, to improvise a solo, for Clay to improvise a solo. When we play it in concert, Quentin takes sometimes an extended drum solo, or Kevin plays a solo. So that's where we frame it into a Ranky Tanky arrangement of this traditional Gullah song.
Because in the traditional setting, there usually wouldn't be any instruments. Is that right?
Traditional setting, you've got people singing, clapping, and stomping on the floor. That's it.
Mhm.
But it's that rhythm. And remember, that's where that's really the basis of it all. That's really the root and the meat of it, the heartbeat of the Gullah community, really.
And do you sometimes add new words, like add some verses at the end, or
Yeah, add
a little chorus or something?
So when a part of the process and everything that I'll definitely co-sign on everything Charlton said about how we make the song come to life. And the song definitely, it does not have life until everybody plugs their superpowers into it. It's like Voltron. But I mean, I will say that when I first came to the group with the idea, you know, I came with a framework, you know, a pretty clear frame of 12 songs. I had the songs, I had all the material, and I made demos and charts, and I had some home demos that were really awful.
You put
But
some
the
work into
ideas were
this.
there. You know what I mean? Like everything, and I don't know I actually was looking to see if I have some of those early demos, and I have them still. And it's interesting to see, like, you know, the structure is there, right? And that was in some way just, you know, me being creative and me looking at it from the outside. It doesn't work until the band plugs into it. Like it doesn't work. But then when the band plugs into it and makes it nuanced and it makes it the thing, then it comes alive. But in terms of like some of the research and frames, it's like a lot of the first record was like kids games. A lot of those songs are kids games, and the Ranky Tanky song and a couple of other songs that we do, you know, they aren't just one song. They could be 3 songs that I sort of made like a collage to make it into like a song in the sense of like what you would hear a Ranky Tanky do, or that would fit in more of the context of, you know, a contemporary song form. Does that make
Sure,
sense?
you've got like 2 or 3 different parts to
Yeah. So
get more
like
variety.
our song Ranky Tanky is a good example of that, because in the beginning there's the "Who is the greatest? We are you sure? Yeah, positive, yeah, definitive," and that's all, and that's kind of sprinkled throughout the arrangement, and that's like a separate track in the Lomax archives. Does
I
that make
see.
sense?
You mashed them up.
You mashed them up, yeah. And then the other song that's a really good example of that in our catalog is a song we call "Join the Band." That's it's really 3 songs. I mean, there's 3 Gullah field recordings that I came upon in my research. I said, "Oh, these are really great. These would work for us." You know, and then kind of it went through that vetting process with the band. I had the arrangement, and it's like a song called Jubilee, which is a sung song that we don't actually sing. We just play it, the melody. And Mama Lama Kuma La Pista, Mama Lama Kuma La Pista, which is a kids game that was actually popularized by Pete Seeger. And it became like a part of the whole campfire, the whole thing that people associate when they say kumbaya. Oh, we're going to have this kumbaya moment that is actually Gullah. But the reason they're saying kumbaya moment, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think is because folk revivalists in the 1960s took those songs and made them popular hits.
And
So
that was probably the Ellen Lomax, Bessie Jones connection, right?
totally. Well, a lot the vast majority of you know, source material for the first record and a lot of the second record was the Bessie Jones archives with Alan Lomax, and you can hear all that stuff. You can check it all out for free on the Alan Lomax website and
The
the book.
Association for Cultural Equity.
Yeah, the Association for Cultural Equity.
Yes. And just for the folks at home, Bessie Jones was a singer from the Georgia Sea Island, or from the South Carolina Sea Islands.
Well, she was actually from Maryland.
Right.
Oh, she's from Maryland.
It's interesting.
Oh, then she
Well, that's
resettled
another
over
thing
there.
that's interesting
Yeah,
to
okay.
me. Is like one of the main exporters of and sort of champions of the culture. I mean, and maybe it's just because she ended up being recorded by Alan Lomax, but she wasn't even from there. You know, but she was an adopted member of that community. She lived there. And
Right, and she's been in that singing group since the 30s, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Right.
interesting. I mean, these things are interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, so she published this book, Step It Down, and she also worked with Lomax. Lomax produced a documentary film about the Georgia Sea Island singers. And so that's part of the point I wanted to make to the folks at home too, is that, while, Gullah culture is the story may be undertold and a lot of people aren't familiar with it, and you're not going to see it on a world music stage, but it is something that has surfaced in American culture from time to time, going back
Yes.
to a book that was a collection of spirituals and shouts that was published 2 years after the Civil War was over. The Slave Songs of the United States. Clay, have you run across that?
Yes, I
Your
have all
research?
those. I have all those books. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
and and a big source of inspiration was the moving Star Hall singers and
Mhm.
Janie Hunter. Um, uh, there was there are a lot of other groups that were recorded by Alan Lomax and that were also a part of the folk revival in the 60s and that were featured at some of the prominent folk music festivals. I mean, when we first started the group, we would get hit up by some of the folk festivals saying, "Oh, I presented Bessie Jones
Mhm.
in 1960 whatever,
Mhm.
and it's so cool what y'all are doing. We really want to present you guys."
Yeah. Um, and the other, I guess the other question I had along those lines was, uh, Charlton, what do you and the home folks think of Porgy and Bess?
Well, that's more, I mean, it's a beautiful piece of work. Gershwin definitely tried to capture what he felt was, the sound at the time and morph it into his, interpretation of things. Um, it's a little bit more on the jazzier side, if you will, although Gullah is definitely an informant of jazz, and it's definitely more on the classical side. But here in the Charleston area, everyone really embraces Porgy and Bess and Gershwin for that matter. It was not a secret that he came to Charleston a lot and did a lot of um, not just research for Porgy and Bess, but he did a lot of vacationing here and a lot of writing of just sketching things out and later fleshing them out. For example, Rhapsody in Blue. He started working on that when he was here in the Charleston area and got back on the train, I think, and was going at it from what he had been just feeling and hanging out here in the Low Country. So that's still king here, if you will. That's still a high thing here. Yeah.
Right. Cool.
Summertime, yeah,
Good
summertime
to
and the
know.
living's easy.
Right.
Yeah.
That's that's Charleston, right?
And that is.
I guess the last question I have is going back to your repertoire and the original songs. How do you approach writing those? Because honestly, listening to your albums, it's not that easy to tell until you look at the liner notes, which ones are the originals and which ones are the traditional ones. And so I guess I made Charlton happy. So,
Well, I mean, Clay and I actually were just talking about this a little bit the other day, and you know, definitely having the spirit of the music, and like I said, just everything is built from the beat. Um, no matter what music that Clay came up with to go along with a melody that Kiana may have started off, or the lyrics that Clay did, or the lyrics that Kiana did, or um, the inspiration from Kevin's bass line or something. It's all coming from that Gullah spirit. Um, we have a song called Freedom, and I always laugh about how freedom really started to how it was born in the Gullah community, and I don't know if it's anywhere else, but I know at home we have a term that we call raising up a song when you're in church, and when you raise up a song, it could be anything that the Spirit has led you to sing or say at that particular moment. And one day we were in sound check and Kiana was on her phone and we were waiting around for something, and just it hadn't officially started, and she had gotten some interesting news, maybe bad news or something like that. And she was just saying, she said, Lord, I just need freedom. Freedom, freedom, freedom. Lord, I just need some free, you know, she was just going on about that. And it was a little comical, you know, but serious at the same time.
And she was saying this into her phone.
Right. This is based off of a conversation she was having, like a text or maybe a conversation or something like that.
Yeah.
But then it morphed into the drum beat happening at that particular time, which, you know, they might not have even been paying attention to what Kiana was doing. But then that led to Clay starting to play a little or tinkle or a little something like that. That led to me trying to mock Kiana and harmonize when she was saying freedom. And I was like, freedom. And then I looked over at Clay and said, sing this, you know, and then we pulled out these things and hit the record.
Yeah.
And that's the beginning of it. But it all started with that whole concept kind of, you know, you raise up a song. It wasn't something that purposefully happened, but we created it into something very purposeful, you know. And Clay could probably tell you more about some of the other, you know, tunes and everything, but I always I chuckle about that particular one because it was such a raw moment. You know?
Yeah, I think a lot of that, what Charlton is saying there is, yeah, it's on the money, because it's like, you know, I think we know each other really well, and that's a real gift. You know, the fact, just even though I've been up here in New York for 20 years, we knew each other so intimately in such an important time in our lives, you know, when we were young and when we were kind of still, you know, on that border between kids and, you know, grown-ups, where you know, that phase of your life is a really important moment, I think. And we know each other from that time really well. We spent a lot of time together in that special time, in some very formative years, and we share a lot of the same values. We share a lot of the same, just, I think, a similar perspective on the world. And so, you know, when I'll go to write a lyric, you know, for a song, you know, I think about, oh, would Kiana sing this? You know what I mean? It's like, would this come out, or is Kiana gonna resonate with this? You know what I mean? And or the other guy's gonna resonate with this? Is this sentiment sort of gonna speak for the band? You know, or is this the wrong context for this group? And luckily, like, you know, I don't think we those couple of things happened in sound check, where the first song was Stand By Me, where we're just jamming and Kiana sings a riff, and then I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then I would kind of like go in my corner and like write some verses, you know, and then I'd be like, try this, and boom. And then it's like all kind of comes together. And then as a group on those original songs, it's like a lot more like, all right, let's shape this together, like everybody's got their hand in the silly putty, and we make it into something, and it's really cool. It's super organic, and it has everybody's vibe on it, and everybody's got a say in it, and it lives, you know. And I think that's why it's kind of seamless, you know, because also, you know, it'll be cool to see if we could write a song about like an iPad or something like that, and it still work. But so far, thematically, it's been like, you know, intangible, you know, conceptual themes that have timeless themes that have, you know, anchored humanity. So it could have been a song, you know, 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago.
Right, which makes it that much less distinguishable from the traditional numbers.
Right. And
right,
you know, and if anything, it sounds, I think the coolest thing about the original songs to me is that it just sounds more like us than anything else. Like they sound more like Ranky Tanky.
Well, we should probably wrap this up. I think
I have one closing question. Since some of our audience includes young people in St. Landry Parish around Opelousas, if you had a piece of advice for somebody who, say, is 15 years old, who might be studying music, but also be from a region with a really rich indigenous culture and really rich African culture, especially, what advice would you have for them as they kind of chart a course forward, continuing to explore music, and who really might have, personal ties to the music culture themselves? But I think what's very often possible and likely is it's possible to take for granted what's in your backyard, and the
Absolutely, man.
music and musicians who you might be related to, and and what advice would you have for somebody who, say, is 15 years old and is in that situation?
I would say talk to any elderly person that you can and ask them, or see if you can get them in a conversation to talk about when they were young. When I go to my parents' house now, sometimes I walk in and I, on the slide, take out my phone and I hit the voice memo, because my parents, my father's 89, my mother is 88, and sometimes they just, the slightest thing can trigger them to start talking about their childhood. And when they do that, it's just more information that goes on and on and on. I have aunts that have, I can't tell you how many different songs that they know. And part of that is helped us when, like when Clay was talking about, he'd bring in songs in, and I'm sitting there saying, that's not how my Aunt Margaret would sing it. No.
Yeah.
And my Aunt Margaret, who is in her early 90s, I'm looking at her as being someone that would definitely know, or at least have some flavor about that, because she's probably remembering it from when she was a kid,
And at least if she didn't sing it that way, she could be like, you know what? But that's okay. It sounds
that's
good.
okay. Yeah. And actually that happened. My mom, listened to the first record and she said, I really like that one song that, but y'all sang one of the verses in the wrong place, but it's okay. You did okay. You did really well.
I feel like it.
Thanks, Mom.
But yeah, I think, you got to seek out the elders and you got to talk with them, because they're the ones that are passing on that knowledge. And that's part of the tradition, of the griot, to pass along that knowledge.
That's beautiful, man. And I agree with all that 100%. And I would also add to you guys, you 15-year-olds out there, to think of your life and your music or your art. If you are creative and you're creating things, you want to create things, think of it as a circle. It's not linear. You're not just going from here to there. You're not trying to get from here where you are, that has no value or nothing interesting. It's so boring and such a drag, to something out there that is so amazing and wonderful. It's all about perspective. And it took me leaving where I'm from, going all the way to Brazil and looking around and saying, oh, actually, this is a lot like where I'm from. And where I'm from actually is very unique and very special and very amazing. So I challenge you to think about that. Think about life as a circle that's ever expanding, and it's just growing and growing and growing and growing. And if you're lucky, you'll get to circle back to the places where you started and know them all new over and over again. And that's a beautiful process.
Sam, I have one more answer to your question, which is that when these 15-year-olds get to college age, they can come to UL and study in our traditional music program.
There you go.
I want to come to UL, man, and study the traditional
Yeah,
music
so we have, right now in the faculty, we have little Nathan Williams Jr., leading our Zydeco class, and Mr. Lee Alamzino, who used to play bass with Buckwheat Zydeco, who's leading one of our blues groups. So, and we've got some really great Cajun players too, like Blake Miller on our team. So check us out.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Fabulous. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Charlton. Thank you, Clay. Thank you, Mark. And thank you everyone who tuned in for this as well. Hope you're able to attend the performance itself, but if you're not, definitely catch Ranky Tanky. You can find them everywhere. On Spotify, you can buy their albums online. Just Google Ranky Tanky, RANKY TANKY, and we'll drop in links to any and all of the articles mentioned, the publications mentioned in the course of this interview in the notes for this video. So you'll have links there as well. Thank you so much, everybody, and hope to see y'all soon.
Thank
you.
you.
You're welcome. Thank
Bye.
you.